I think we can start.
Please do.
Okay. Um, Hi, good evening, everyone. Um, while we are all here to, attend this session on Men of 2001 on masculinity, which will start in a while. But before that, this week was very difficult for all of us. Um, we had got this message that we lost two of our young alumni, Jagmohan Malik, PFM 2011, and then Abhishek Chauhan, PFM 2012. I mean, it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult for their family, to accept this, and to their batchmate, and for all of us. It's very tragic. It's very sad. I mean, um, may God give courage to the family and everyone, who are known to them. So let us observe a silence. Let us observe silence of 1 minute, remembering Jagmohan and Abhishek. Okay. Um, Let me welcome you all for today's session. And as you have already seen the poster of this session, which is about Men of 2001 on masculinity. And I think you all understand that about we are talking about the panelists who are from 2001 batch. While they are from 2001 batch, but the discussion we are going to have, is relevant for all of us. So, as the name suggests, as the topic suggests, we all have our understanding and perception about masculinity, about gender stereotype. So, let us hear from the panelists. Let us hear from the host of the program. And trust me, this is not going to be a lecture, but this is going to be चर्चा बातचीत क्या समझते हैं हम और ये सब this is all going to be based on how we evolved about this, how our thinking evolved about this, and it's completely based on our own understanding and experience. And I would like to thank IntelliCap for helping us again, to organize this program, to help us share the link of this platform, Zoom. Um, so, welcome you all, and I hand over to Nimisha to continue the program.
Thank you, Avinash. And
Thank you all the panelists and all the participants. So before I go into the plan for, why we are having this webinar, why we are doing this, I just wanted to just also talk about a little housekeeping rules. So let's keep, except the panelists, let's keep ourselves muted. Please feel free to uh, put your comments, reflections on the chat. So Shikha will be scanning them. And we are really pressed for time, so we had put an hour for this, and as I see, we've already like 12 minutes into it. So we'll take up some of the questions. We'll use our judgment for um, flagging those questions, and but we already have forums where we can use some of those. So, like Avinash said, this is supposed to be like a fun event, which we have also planned, and so there were a few questions around, why. So I think there was a confusion around 2001. So we just happened to be batchmates from 2001, and we thought, while we are talking about such a thought-provoking topic, we are all very, it's easy for us to talk to each other, थोड़ा बातचीत करना सरल है हमारे लिए, थोड़ा मजा मतलब थोड़ा fun भी, we are going to make it a little fun as well. And we are all comfortable. I hope we are comfortable with each other. The idea was also to kind of like use this forum to also go beyond like, jobs, interesting like conversations around development and delve a little deeper into ourselves. And as we go along, probably we'll understand also how we all have come to this place. We were already in our early 20s when we came to IFM, and now I mean, I shouldn't be saying it, but it's been almost like 24 years since we passed out. So we were facing some struggles before we came to IFM, and we have struggled in this past 24 years as well. So taking back some of us to our struggles. And just one more thing. So Avinav is traveling right now. So he'll be kind of based on his bandwidth in the train. He will keep on coming and going. And so kindly excuse us on that. So just to kind of like set the tone, we thought that, for gender transformative change, gender equality is just isn't about women's empowerment. It's also about empowering men, and they have their own struggles in performativity, in stereotypes, as Avinash had said. So let us go to our panelists and start hearing from them. But just before we go into trying to understand what do they mean by masculinity, how it connotes with their own experiences, I would request all of you to briefly tell about yourself, because some of you, even I haven't met or heard from in a long time. So I'm sure all of us want to know more about each other. So maybe I'll start with Avinav, since he seems to be on a lesser bandwidth. So Avinav, over to you. And you just have like 2 minutes. We can't hear you.
So I definitely want me to and I missed the second part.
Okay. So maybe let's go to Alok.
Is
Okay.
it better now?
So hello everyone. Good evening to everyone. I think Avinav is still trying to connect. So should we give him a minute before we start?
Go ahead, Alok. I'll quickly introduce myself.
Yeah. You're not audible, Avinav.
Avinav sounding like Wally. Alok, why don't you go ahead and then we'll let Avinav in whenever he's got some bandwidth.
Yeah. Yeah. So good evening, everyone. Alok here, of course, from the 9901 batch, and thanks Nimisha for inviting me to this to this discussion. I don't know what we can discuss about masculinity, but definitely it is a good opportunity to meet batchmates and after so long a time. Of course, we keep meeting off and on. We have been meeting off and on since the last 20 years. So from IFM, I'll just brief about what I did after IFM. From IFM, from campus, moved to Seva Mandir, worked for a year, specifically in the Panchayati Raj domain. After a year, again came back to academics, did another degree in agribusiness management from IIM Ahmedabad, and from there, my most of my journey has been in the financial services space, typically in agri and rural business, and also in post-harvest management. In between a few years, I was in Africa in a country which very few people know. It's called Djibouti. Stayed there for a couple of years post-COVID, pre-COVID, and post-COVID moved back to India. Worked in basics consulting for a year, and then after that, I have moved to EY. So right now, I'm with Ernst& Young, working in the social service space. Amit happens to be my super boss in the company, and basically based out of Hyderabad right now, and looking after South India, Maharashtra, and Odisha at this point in time. So and I have my family with me in Hyderabad. Jayati, who is my wife, works for this not-for-profit called South Asian Consortium for Interdisciplinary Water Studies, or Saki Waters. They mostly do their work in the water space. That's based out of Hyderabad, but they usually work in the South Asia region. And I have a son who is 11 years old right now and just moved to grade 7. So that's more like me in 2 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you, Alok. Rahul, maybe can we hear from you? But just let's keep this quite brief. Yeah.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Rahul. I am Alok's batchmate from 2001 batch. Uh, I I hail from Dehradun. I did my earlier schooling in Dehradun, and then uh, from IFM onwards, I did my first job was with Seva Mandir, along with Alok there. And after that, I joined MCRIL for a couple of years. We did credit ratings at MCRIL. And at an earlier stage of my life, or career rather, uh, I started my own company with a couple of other colleagues from MCRIL. It's called Prime M2I Consulting. And since then, we have been running this company. It's a consulting firm. Uh, Personally, I have a wife and one daughter. She is currently in just moved to 12th standard.
Thank you, Rahul. Pranav, can we move on to you? Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Nimisha. And hi, everyone. Great to be here and great to be seeing really familiar faces. So Pranav Sharma, again from the IFM class of 2001. I come from Ranchi and was catapulted straight into IFM after my graduation. And it was a sort of awakening of sorts. IFM basically had three highlights for me. One of the biggest highlights was obviously the lifelong friendships that I got at IFM, some of whom you see here spotlighted, and some who are not spotlighted, and some who have not joined. The second highlight was, all the travel we did during IFM, including OTs, the organizational trainings, one of which was with Samir, one of which was with Amit. And the one with Amit was basically traipsing around in the jungles in Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, living with a group of tribals, basically, who are the only hunting gathering tribals or group remaining in India. The third highlight was, graduating out of IFM and then immediately meeting someone in IFM who would then move on to be my wife. So Shikha, she's also on the call. So those were my three highlights from IFM. After IFM, I joined ETA and Krill, did credit ratings of microfinance institutions, as Rahul did. Then moved to Mumbai, helped set up a small an investment bank for microfinance, Grameen Capital India. And then Shikha moved to the US, so I followed her to the US, did my MBA, second MBA from Wharton. And then I joined BP straight out of Wharton in 2009, and I've been with BP since 2009. I've moved across upstream, trading, strategy, partnerships, etc. We were in the US. Shikha followed me to London and then to Mumbai, and then back in London from 2009 2015. And since then, we've been basically following our two kids, Vanya and Vikram. Vanya is 10 years old, Vikram is 8 years old.
Thank you. Thank you, Pranav. I really like the following part. Let's move on to Asim. Asim, are you? I think he had logged out in between.
I'm
Is
back. I mean, we
okay.
had those rare power cuts which had to happen during the call. So great feeling. So I actually didn't hear much of the introduction, so I'm just assuming that we are simply telling us ourselves about us, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So same batch. I came from Lucknow. I grew up there, and I did bachelor's in physics and maths before I came in, and then I think from IIFM I went to Aga Khan Rural Support Program, which used to be like a very good catch in a sense for people who wanted to go and work in the field. I didn't last very long there, and then I came back to work for Eklavya in Bhopal, primarily because all my friends with whom I liked hanging out were there. So I came in, and I think Naveen was there, Ravina was there, and Aishwarya was there. Three of us. Pratibha was also there, and Eklavya came in. Then we spent a lot many years working for Eklavya. And then I think I moved to Lucknow for work because my spouse, Abhilasha, she used to work for State Bank of India, and she was not able to cross over from the Lucknow circle to Bhopal circle. And then from Lucknow, I eventually decided to go and get a PhD in sociology, came to North Carolina, and then I have been a sociologist ever since. So I live in a city called Fresno in California, which is known as California's armpit. So it's really nice to be here.
Thank you, Asim. And it's interesting, how Asim moved from towns to town and is still living in a small town in the US. So Avinav has put it on the chat. Avinav, let's try again if you can speak. Otherwise, I will speak out like what you put on the chat. We'll just try for a minute.
Yeah, thanks. Let's try for a minute. As I said, live in Bhopal. For the past 24 years, I've been working with nonprofits largely, and presently consulting part-time. I'm nurturing a nonprofit with whom I've been associated for the past 10 to 12 years. I have my partner Bhavna,
Your voice is breaking again.
purposely
Sorry, your voice is breaking again, Avinav. So we'll just move on. So I think what he's also written is that he's a father of a 17-year-old boy, have been with various nonprofits. And I should also say something here. So Avinav had a couple of years ago, he had done podcasts on basically gendered roles in parenting. And from there also this whole idea emerged, and he basically invited my husband to who happens to be a very, he calls himself like a normal businessman, and he asked him to come on one of those podcasts. And from basically when I was kind of like thinking of this event, that idea emerged from there, that let's look at it the other way. So thank you all for the quick introduction. So I think let's move into the key questions, which I'm sure everybody has joined to listen to. So maybe we can start with Alok. And I just wanted to kind of like, let's go back in time and look at, when we joined IFM, when we were growing up. What is it that, what was our whole notion? Like we were discussing before this event as well, and Alok was rightly saying that, what is masculinity? So let me pose this question back to Alok. And also, what was your notion of masculinity while growing up? जब बड़े हो रहे थे तो what was it? Because I remember, like, as a girl, when I was growing up, there was a lot of pressure. People would call me because a lot of people would say that I was a tomboy, which was actually considered to be something I thought was great because I wasn't being associated as a girlish girl enough. So I'm sure there was a real pressure on some of you as well. So over to you, Alok.
Yeah. Although it's mentioned that it'll be a casual chat, but seems ki thoda sa heavy questioning hi hoga. But anyways, I'll start out. I think most of the people who are part of the panel spoke about the kind of cities they come from. Basically, I skipped mentioning that during my introduction. So basically, I come from a small town called Sonabeda, which is in Koraput district of Odisha. Very few people must be knowing about it, but uh, while I was growing up, I'll put in a few incidents which happened during my growing up years. So basically, when I was born with some congenital defects. My mom used to be a nurse, staff nurse at that point in time, and she took a brave call to kind of get me operated when I was just 3 months old. That's one of the calls due to which I'm able to walk like a normal person. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for me growing up. And I don't know that life would have been very completely different. And of course, she had to leave her job, and we had a normal childhood. But uh, to be very honest, during my growing up years, since my mother was educated, used to work before I was born, and then my brother followed, and she always used to keep on saying ki, I miss work, I miss doing work, I miss working, etc. So there was this thing ingrained in my mind ki why whenever I grow up, probably I will not kind of face this kind of a question to my partner or whatever. And also I made also me and my brother like kind of thought to ourselves that by the time we are able to do things on our own, we'll kind of push our mom to get back to a job, whether it's permanent, whether it is part time, is something not very important, but something that probably we should be facilitating her doing, so that she doesn't have this uh, you can say afterthought ki baba main padhai ki hu, etc., and I'm not able to work further. So that's what exactly happened after I passed out my 12th, and I actually did my graduation in agriculture, so I had to move out of home. And my brother also got through his engineering entrance, and he moved to Hatia for doing his BTech. And then we kind of nudged our mother to kind of work, etc., although my father was not very keen in her joining something after such a long gap, but we did push her. Eventually she got into the hospital which was part of the factory. I was basically from a township called Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, so she was able to get back to work. So I think my perception about masculinity at that point in time was probably whatever the like the male of the species, or probably the head of the family, says is something which is very dominant. And probably and so when I came to IFM, that complete perspective changed for me, because when you come to IFM, you read a lot about sociology, and you read a lot about anthropology and the way things happen, etc., etc. So also I would like to mention here that my like my parents are from a tribal background. Not my mother, my father is from a tribal background. So the societal you can say equations at my village are completely different when you look at say city interactions with women and at the village level even today. So they are much more I think you can say mature at the village level, not unlike in cities. So this kind of contradictory you can say lifestyle that I have had over a period of time has actually we can say matured my thinking about masculinity, etc. So I think I can only say those things about what has happened in my life and how it has kind of
Thank you. Okay,
okay.
thank you, Alok. I think it's very important. Like, I think one of the things which we tried to do, I think it was also the willingness of all of you to be courageous to talk about things which are not so easy to talk about. But I think the whole diversity and understanding that, all men or all women are not the same. Um, so I think we will come back to this again and what changed. But thank you for putting that up there. And so can I go to Avinav if you
Yes,
are able
yes,
to?
Namisha.
Okay, please
I
go.
believe we are stopping somewhere. Anyways, so yeah, I mean, as I wrote, I was raised up literally in the depiction, if you really see in the gangs of Wasseypur, a Patna of that time, and masculinity was never spoken within the family as such. There was no conversation. but there was enough in the air to pick it up. So, वही एक imagery, I mean, in terms of a very deep sense of entitlement, a very broad notion of the protector of women, a very broad notion of choosing and then be entitled to the woman that you want to befriend and get along with, and a lot of similar other things. Uh, and the kind of granular manifestations are even interesting when I look back. So it didn't really matter when I said protector. It didn't really matter that whom did you protect. If there are two people fighting on the street, as a masculine, as a man, you are supposed to intervene and stop that fight. Otherwise, in Bihar, and those of you who are exposed to that lingo, that language, there's a very apt term to explain that also, or the opposite of not being masculine, and that's called mauga in Hindi or Bhojpuri, if I may say. तो अगर आप दो लोग लड़ाई कर रहे हैं सड़क पे और आप उनमें इंटरवीन नहीं कर रहे हैं, तो देन यू आर कैटेगराइज्ड एज दैट. अगर कुछ लोगों ने आपके साथ चलती हुई महिला पे, चाहे आपकी मित्र हो, चाहे आपकी बहन हो, चाहे आपकी दूसरी और जानकार हो, अगर उन पे कुछ कमेंट कर दिया और आपने इंटरवीन नहीं किया, देन आल्सो यू आर नॉट मैस्कुलिन. So a lot of notions of what masculinity is for me was shaped up by your behaviors which were not masculine, and that's very interesting. And when I landed up in IFM after all of this in 1999, suddenly all of that was demolished because I expected to see men around me who were harboring similar notions of what masculinity would be, and I would see similar manifestations. So that was somewhere at the back of the mind, probably. But the diversity, the sheer diversity of the people around, both the senior batch and when we were around, kind of was very, very mind-boggling for me because it was for me of the very first exposure to really come out of the city of Patna and be in an institution like IFM. So that's how I look back, and when I say the initial formation of the whole idea of masculinity was there. And of course, over the years, a lot of exposures. I mean, it's not just about IFM. IFM probably triggered the thought process, not so much from the institutional perspective, but the people. I mean, those who are here under the spotlight and many more. And also the women, I mean, who were there in our batch, and the kind of personalities did they carried, and the kind of scope for interaction and scope for engagement that existed. So a lot of that, and over the years, then it kind of also got theorized by many academic exposures, work exposures, and conversations with a diversity of people. So that's how when I see myself that whole sense of entitlement first has gone, that being a man or having done this and having done that, I'm entitled to something. That's the first notion of masculinity that was shattered when I remember back in 1999. So I'll pause here. I'm again losing signals. I might not be
Sure.
audible. I'll come
Thank
back.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, Abhinav. So can I? So actually, I've been witness to my son growing up. He's 20-year-old now, and often like he used to be a crybaby, he used to cry a lot, and then the whole crying had to be beaten out of him in the school, where he was actually called sissy, because the boys are not supposed to cry. So let me let me with that move to Rahul. Rahul, you're from Dehradun, you grew up in Uttarakhand, and so why don't you? I mean, I'm also from Dehradun, and I mean, I don't want to comment on how Dehradun boys are, but maybe why don't you talk about like growing up? How was it in a city, I mean, in a town becoming a city as we were growing up?
So you should also give a disclaimer that you're married a Dehradun boy. So yeah, just for the
Yeah,
benefit
yeah,
of our.
yeah, yeah, of course.
Nimisha, my idea of masculinity or my experience is a bit different from Alok's and Avinav's. I was born in a place called Lansdowne in Uttarakhand, which was a very small city. And then my primary school, like up to fifth grade, I did in a very small town called Gochar. And then I moved to Dehradun, which was a fairly large town for us, coming from very small hill uh, towns. And then I got admitted in a good school in Dehradun. As you all know, Dehradun is known for schooling. So for me, actually, I had no idea or no notion of masculinity. I I never felt that I was born in a gender which is considered to be more privileged in our society, because I never get to feel that kind of difference. I was born in a family which had only one woman, which was my mother. So we had no sister to benchmark against. Uh, so what happened was that at my family, it was a very typical middle class family. My father was a banker, my mother was a housewife, and she was a very strict mother, because most of the times for our studies, she was the one who's giving us the schedule that you have to study up to 5 o'clock. Then we used to go for our play and then come back at 6. So it was a very regimented kind of uh, this thing for us. And all because of my mother, because my father was again a very typical man who was not much involved with our studies. He was a very good father. Plus my father and mother also never had I mean, it was all very uneventful for me. So I never seen my father kind of playing that masculine role in our family. So they always had a very good partnership. So I never get to witness where. So for me, growing up, the strong figure at my home was my mother, because she was the one who was disciplining us, me and my brother. And then even at the school, so at home, I never thought that women uh, were considered in our society a weaker gender. And at school, again, coming from a small town and then suddenly going to a big school, where there used to be, as you know, the environment in Dehradun was used to be quite modern. So you find these girls who were at school, who could speak fluent English, who would, as we were growing up, they were very cool girls. They had a style, whereas and I had a gang of boys who were very, very rustic, in the sense that we could never dare to speak to those girls, because we thought they were so stylish. They will do their sleeves would be open, their ties would be loose, their socks would be to the ankle and skirts above knees. So those were the kind of women I was dealing with at the school. So when I grew up, say, when the first time this gender bias word ever I heard or understood, probably when I was in eighth and I had some social consciousness and TV, if there is some campaign, my first my first impression, and I'm not kidding, was that probably gender bias is against men, because at school also, all of us were getting beatings and we used to get punishments, whereas all the girls were treated like special, and we really thought that they were special because they were good at studies, good at sport, good at speaking. Most of the girls were confident, and most of the bunch of my guys, my friends used to wear these elastic ties, when these girls I just described were like that. So it was like that for us. So actually, I thought that somebody took up the gender bias issue, and I thought it was for us, for the boys. But then later on, I actually realized that it was actually the gender bias is more against girls, and it's more towards the society is biased towards men. So that was kind of revelation for me at the school. So overall, I never had this idea of masculinity, because I never got to witness it even at my home. Plus, I think in the hill society, women are generally slightly more empowered. Like even my grandmother was very strong woman. So my grandfather never did anything without asking her. I used to see that my grandmother was the one who was uh, taking all the decisions at home, even the economic ones, like they had to sell the grains and everything. So she's the one who's doing it. At my home, as I said, it was my mother, and at school, I said all the girls I used to see were super cool, whereas all the boys that they were the ones who were getting all the punishments most of the times. So for me, I think I never got that idea of masculinity and never got that sense of entitlement that Avinav just talked about. So for me, that was how my prior to IFM, or prior to, say, when I even started seriously thinking about the gender issue or the masculinity thing, that was my notion of masculinity, that I had actually never felt that gender bias against women. I never witnessed it, and for me, masculinity was nothing. So it wasn't that as men you have to do something special. I rather thought that it was women who were more privileged in the society that I grew up.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rahul. I mean, it's funny because I remember like in my class, there were few boys who would say कि लड़कियों के साथ partiality होती है इसलिए उनको नंबर मिलते हैं. So, so I'm glad, and that is something which has stuck to me because I remember one boy telling me, and I told him कि boards में देखेंगे because that is all anonymous. But you brought that thing. But interestingly, in Dehradun there was also a big culture where I saw boys kind of like taking hockeys. हमारे स्कूल में था. So they would go and खूब लड़ाइयाँ होती थी, which I
हाँ.
didn't see in like when I came to DU. And I used to think कि पता नहीं कैसे लड़के हैं यहाँ पे मार खा लेते हैं. So, yeah. But I think it's very interesting. Like what you said was that you didn't even realize that you had the privileges or the entitlement, which is kind of like, I think a lot of us also talk about कि हमें नहीं पता चला कि हम upper caste हैं. So it's something like that, though we are not going into the caste kind of conversation right now. But going to Pranav, so would you like to talk about it? You know?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I grew up in Ranchi, as I said, and while it was in Bihar, it was surprisingly very, very cosmopolitan and feels like a bubble whenever I hear about stories of the rest of Bihar from classmates and friends. Within Ranchi, I grew up in a colony called Heavy Engineering Corporation, and that was truly a bubble. Grew up with some really strong women in my family. My mother was a professor at the university. My elder sister, who was 13 years elder to me, used to be like an academic star. And for the longest time, I used to be known as Manisha's younger brother. So that was the scenario at home. It was a completely different scenario in school, which was an all boys school. And that's where the testosterone fueled sort of atmosphere sort of really took a hold. And at that point in time, masculinity really meant about doing things or being someone who would be attractive to girls. And we had like a sister school, which was a girls' school, and it was all about basically trying to impress those girls to look at us and laugh or smile or whatever from a distance, obviously, because this was a strict Catholic boys' school. So that was what masculinity growing up in school was about, being good at sports, being good at banter, being probably good in academics, etc. And then, you know, this was also a time, maybe completely naive days or maybe completely sort of innocent days. We didn't really know what being gay was. And there was always a group in different years of some boys who were very obviously you could have told that they were gay, and unfortunately, because none of us knew what being gay was, they were the guys who were the most grilled in school, and उनको हम लड़की बोलते थे. We used to be like ये क्या लड़कियों की तरह behave कर रहे हैं, and they used to be the girls group in a boys school essentially. And that sort of brings home to me whenever I think of it. Whenever I talk to those guys now, they were perfectly fine with it, and they were perfectly sort of happy being labeled as the girls of the boys' school. So that was probably some element of toxic masculinity coming in there, but we never felt it as such. Everyone sort of took it in their strides. We have a school WhatsApp group, and some of those guys still sort of enjoy the kind of ribbing that we used to give them when they were in schools, although not physical now, only verbal. When I came to IFM, it sort of all came into a much sharper focus. I mean, there were different kinds of men and very, very strong women in our batch in IFM, in the senior batches and the junior batches as well. And masculinity was then about being like Netrapal Singh, who had who used to drive a very nice Yamaha YPX, being like Amit Vatsayan, who was the caretaker of the batch, and in some real sense, the 56 inch ka chhati wala Pelwan, and then being probably like Niloy, who was great at speaking and probably the Shashi Tharoor of his batch before I knew Shashi Tharoor, and being like Dotty Deepak Kujuri, who was a fantastic dancer. So I'm not calling everyone out obviously, but some of these people really sort of had an impression, and it sort of became a sort of a nebulous concept of trying to be like the qualities, trying to emulate the qualities of people that you admired from around you. And sort of, being forced to really respect some of the really strong women in our batch as well. So, I mean, I'm still growing up, but I'll restrict it to that.
Thank you, Pranav. I think couple of things here before I go to Asim. I think what you also call out is the hegemonic idea of masculinity in a sense, all of you, like to some extent. Uh, and I think when Avna was talking about, being the protector, to you talking about how masculinity was about being attractive to girls and trying to like, fit into a scenario. And like my son, I remember like his voice broke. He was quite tall for his age, and his voice broke out very late. So he used to come and cry and say कि उसको बोला जाता था कि वो लड़कियों की तरह sound करता है. So I can kind of like relate because I never knew actually, I used to only think that growing up a girl was very challenging. So when I was a witness to some of his this thing, I actually realized that growing up a boy when you have certain roles to perform is also not that easy. So, Asim, over to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I'll just try to pack in a lot in as few minutes as I can. So I was thinking about, I mean, as I was listening to my friends here, I mean, two or three different stages, very distinct stages in which I learned about men and how men are and how they're different from women. And I think the earliest part is when I was like maybe between 5 and maybe 9, where I have memories of, spending time with my paternal and maternal extended families. I mean, I grew up in a nuclear family in a colony which was very cosmopolitan, so away from my joint family. So I didn't really get to see the everyday practices of, patriarchy and all playing. My father used to be a lecturer in an evening college, which actually allowed him to be home all day. So he would go to office at 5 and come back at 9:30 when we were all asleep. So I mean, I grew up seeing my father and mother both being in the home, which is like rare for a lot of middle class people, salaried people. And so while he was not like interested in housework or very I would say equal in his behavior, my mother would make him do some like minor stuff, jhadu laga do, ye kar do, and then he was always do it like badly. So he would get like gently scolded for it. So I mean, one of those things, that memory is like very strong in my mind, that because men also are doing housework, which is kind of great. The other thing I'm remembering from those days is I spent a lot of time in my Nanihal, which was in nearby Barabanki near Ayodhya. And all the men in my Nanihal were like out of work. I mean, they were all like from traditional landed families, and land was gone. But though rassi ke bal the, wo nahi gaye the. So they were not like working. So when you go home, like my mamu is sitting on a takht and he's smoking a cigarette, and my nana who was dead by then. I mean, we had all these stories that nana was a shire, and he would have a charpai in a bath that had long been sold to someone, but he still put his cot there and sit and hookah pee rahe hain wahan par. So all the men in my maternal family, I mean, they had no, I mean, they were not like these traditional men with power. They were like powerless men. And all the important things were done by women. So women were running the house. Women were earning. So all my mausis, my khalas, they were like they used to work in schools and teach and bring home like money to run the house. And so, I mean, I didn't really see a lot of like men with some kind of, power in my very early childhood. And I also started going to a co-ed school. My first school was co-ed. So I think that really made probably a difference that I can see when I was growing up. I think it was in fifth grade when I went to a boys' school when we moved. And that is where I started, feeling this, I would say, pressure of being a boy for the first time. And I think it was a rough school. It was a Catholic school. So, I mean, the all the oppressors were men. So, Brother Anthony would cane us, and Brother someone else, Charles, would like, make us stand up with our hands up and all. So, it was a rough kind of a school. I mean, I like the feeling. I mean, now that I think about it, but it was, I think that was where I learned that to be a boy, you have to be competing with other boys. And as Pranav was talking about, no, getting impressed by other people. And all the impressive boys were impressive because they were either very athletic or very strong or muscular or like tall or stuff like that. And I was none. And so I think, I mean, later on when I went to college, I think those experiences were what really shaped my decision of having a mustache, a big mustache, because that was the only thing I could have. I couldn't, become very athletic or never liked the gym, so never could build my muscles. So my mustache came maybe as a response to, those pressures of becoming like a strong boy. At least, I mean, if you don't know me, if you see me from afar, you will see a person with a mustache. So I think that played a role. I was also thinking that one absence was very important in my understanding of masculinity. I mean, we had no TV in the way that we have now. I mean, our kids are like getting to learn about gender roles much more than they do from us than from TV. And the only two things I remember from TV in those days was Animal Planet, three things actually. So Animal Planet, which had no men or women, and then the other was Star Trek, where my favorite character was Mr. Spock, who was not even like a normal man, I would say. And then the third thing, which I really, really think about, which really probably affected me, is this series called Hum Log. And Hum Log had all these, these weak men. I mean, so Lallu and Nanhe, and they're like really struggling with everything in society. So they are not like that assertive men. So I think all of these things really, made me into I would say, a non-masculine man. I mean, definitely I was very aware that I was a boy and a man, but not in the masculine way that I sort of saw my other friends. And finally, one quick one, and please stop me if I am going over. So I think there is one small event I remember from my intermediate days. I went to this Catholic school, and which was all boys, and so there was a lot of pressure on being a strong and I mean, whatever, I mean, masculine boy. And I somehow became the house captain for one of the four houses. So one of these annual events we had was to, go and play games with other schools, other Catholic schools. And so in one of these games we were visiting, and someone from the opposite host soccer team, they kicked someone in my team on the face. And so I was like, I mean, pushed forward to go and, do something about it because I was the house captain. And I had to go and confront this boy who had kicked our player. And I mean, I can't tell you how scared I was. I was like shivering because I just hate physical altercations. I never had like physical fights with anyone, maybe like once or twice. And I went and I slapped him. And I mean, I almost had a heart attack because I was so scared. But I mean, I saw that all of these, strong boys in my school who were there with me. I mean, they wanted me to go and play this titular role of the general, go and slap this boy, and then we will see the rest. And then they jumped on him, and there was a big fracas and everything. But I remember my memory of that event is that I was scared. I almost had a heart attack as in I was shivering. And I slapped him, and I just went into the back, and everyone came in and started fighting. But I think this is what the state I was in when I came to IFM. So a very clear notion of what a boy and a man is, but not having those qualities in myself and
Uh,
missing them all.
thank you, Asim. I think some of these stories are new to me also. I thought I knew a lot of your stories because I remember Asim telling me once that, he would always try to run away when there was a fight happening somewhere. So, okay, so I think we are a little like running out of time, but I hope it's interesting and some all of you can stay back. So let's very quickly go into, what has changed. These are what this is what we were when we came to IFM. So what has really changed? अभी हम क्या सोचते हैं? And हमारी कैसे like, how has this evolved for us? So let's try to be a little briefer. I mean, I'm thoroughly enjoying it, but being cognizant of the time. तो अभिनव तुमसे शुरू करें क्या? Because I know that you might drop out at any time. I think he's probably not around. Okay, so maybe shall I go back to Pranav? Let's start with you. So what has changed? How did it change? Why did it change? Has anything changed, like, as to what you earlier narrated?
I mean, I think things keep changing according to your how your priorities in life change, and clearly my priorities have changed from wanting a girl to smile at me when I was in class 9 to now basically wanting my daughter to smile at me and be happy at most times, and that sort of ebbs and flows. I mean, I think the most dramatic change I've had in my life is by basically being the daughter, by being the father of a daughter essentially, and not just a daughter but also a son. And priorities have very, very dramatically changed. After I graduated from business school, and even before that, graduating from IIFM, it was all about career, wanting to earn, as much money as possible in the shortest period of time. And then, with kids growing up, and then, the blessing that COVID was in some ways, of us being at home with the children, I think that's completely sort of changed my outlook on life. And it's for me, it's more about not just sort of providing for them financially, but being there for them, cooking stuff for them, playing games with them, ensuring that they get a solid grounding in terms of education, but also in terms of other sort of extracurriculars. It's not about sort of, being in the C-suite in office. It's definitely not about, being the alpha male, um, in office or wherever else. And I think that's something that's dramatically changed, at least for me. So parenthood has sort of almost, if I was being uncharitable, it has emasculated me. But I am enjoying it.
Thank you. So I think so you for you, like I think parenthood, and I think also Shikha was the one who kind of spoke to you about like being available on this panel. And she was kind of like she was also part of your journey. So she was very sure that you have a lot to talk about. So over to you, Avinav, if your bandwidth allows. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what changed, how it changed, why it changed?
A lot of things change. I mean, and I would say I would also not kind of put it in the perfect past tense. A lot of things are changing. I mean, it's for me, it has always been looking at new realizations every time. But I remember very distinctly, and as I said, the whole manifestation of the gangs of Wasseypur, something which I mean, how do you really are jolted out of the idea that what really you have been perceiving as a privilege and what you have been really perceiving as a way to go is something which can fall back upon you. I mean, till the time now, as I see it, I analyze it like this: that till the time it is external to you and it's kind of giving you privileges, it is all fine. What happened that a dear and a close friend was, and that was the age in which, unfortunately, we were living, abducted, raped, and killed, and that came as a very, very big jolt for me in terms of. And that exactly was a manifestation of masculinity that was in the air, and that's something that certain traits of it was being picked up by me, or my understanding was shaping up like that. Probably it was it was so on the face this event that it really triggered or started the thinking process. I must have been in I would believe the first year of my graduation or the second year of my graduation when this happened. And subsequently, the first impetus was to really get out of this place, not so much thinking in terms or theorizing it as I'm doing now. But later on, when I reflect back, and that's something which kind of changes things forever. And subsequently, a lot of I mean, a lot of understanding in terms of how uh, I mean, these privileges are always skewed towards you not being, not really moving towards a kind of a relationship in which equality prevails, and therefore that has to go away. So that realization also comes from exposure to me, came from exposure to me. A lot of women friends whom I kind of over the years have built a very strong bonding with, and it goes beyond my partner. You are one of them, and there are others also who are equally, I mean, comfortable beyond the genders in terms of how the society had shaped, or how the external, or how my interpretation had shaped me when I was growing up. So that, and a lot of interactions with people who are in this room right now. I mean, my batchmates, whether it is Asim did the facts a little wrong. It was not he who moved to Eklavya from AKRSP. He kind of brought me here, ditched me, and moved out. And then they used to call me every other day. The incoming or the outgoing charges was 12 rupees a minute, saying that हम यहाँ दारू पी रहे हैं तुम वहाँ बैठ के क्या कर रहे हो यार कहाँ जीवन बर्बाद कर. So finally I also landed up in Eklavya with all of them. So, but that whole culture, and that's another kind of formative, I would say, that whole culture where you broadly don't so much speak about masculinity as such, but you broadly talk about a utopian dream of an equal society beyond all identity, whether it is of gender, caste, religion, or everything. And that started kind of concretizing my ideas of how I look at the whole issue of masculinity within me, and how I or my work, since I've been with working with communities through nonprofits, how it should manifest in others. So that's where I'll take a pause here, and over to you back,
Thank
Nisha.
you. Thank you, Abhinav. So I remember that, when we were in IFM, these guys would tell me that I was one of them. They never felt that I was a girl. So I don't think whether it was good or bad at that time, but I think they kind of made me into also a boy with them because I was the only girl hanging out with them. So probably to give me also the legitimacy of, being part of a gang. So let's move on to Alok. And so Alok, has anything changed in the way? Did it like really um though you did speak about that when you grew up, you came to the cities, you saw, and incidentally I've been to Sonabera, and Kulranjan was telling me that this is where you grew up. So it's such a beautiful place actually. So over to you, Alok.
Yeah. So I think the concept of masculinity in itself is so work in progress, and it also depends on the kind of context that you are in. I'll just give a couple of examples. So I passed out from an all boys college. So there the concept of masculinity was very different. Today also in the WhatsApp group that we are in, the kind of you can perception about masculinity still remains the same, despite the fact that it's been almost 25 to 27 years since we have passed out. The concept of masculinity still remains quite primitive, if I may use the word. And then probably like now when I'm married to Jayati, who comes from a very different state. She comes from Madhya Pradesh. She's from Bhopal, and her family, they kind of believe in Shakti. They worship goddesses, and they go to a specific you can say ashram, where typically what happens is people kind of bow down before girls and not vice versa. So my wife, like Jayati, she has never bowed down before anyone for touching their feet or whatever, except my parents, maybe, because that that seems to be one thing that she has to do when she comes to my home. But typically in her family and her extended family, she kind of never bows down to elders or relatives or anything. It's the other way around. They kind of bow down to them. In fact, my father-in-law, he bows down to every girl who comes to our home, even if he or she is like a kid or whatever. So that perception of masculinity changes then and there itself, because there the idea of what a man should be completely gets reversed. So what I'm trying to say is the context of masculinity differs for me when I move from one context of mine to another. So for example, my in the IFM group that we are in, one thing I was kind of lucky in is most of the groups that I'm in, it's a very smallish group. For example, in IFM we are only just 30 to 35 people. Similarly, in my college group also, it was a very small group of about 35 people. In IMA also, the agribusiness management team was again a 30-35 member team. So although it's a microcosm, the perception of masculinity changes as you move from one group to the other. So my perception about masculinity is still evolving. And I'll just give a before I end, I'll just give a very interesting example. Since I have a son, and we live in an era where feminism is celebrated in a way everywhere, he's confused as to whether he should have been born as a boy or a girl, right? For example, he has a cousin who is just 7 months older to him, and when his father went and invested some money in this scheme called Sukanya Samriddhi scheme, which is a very girl specific scheme, right? He came back to me and said, "Papa, आपने मेरे लिए क्यों invest नहीं किया?" I said, I don't know, because that scheme is not applicable to boys at all at this point in time. And you have Women's Day coming in. I have to explain it to him, the context as to why it is happening, etc. And again, like my father-in-law kind of falls down on the feet of every girl, तो उसको भी कर लेते हैं, but then he knows कि after a point in time probably he has to fall bow down before girls, etc. So his perception of masculinity is very, very different from mine. As I grew up, it's very different for him. So that's where I would like to end. Thanks.
Thank you. So I think we grew up in different times. The times have changed. Some things remain, and like you said, that it's very like it's a lived reality. It changes. It's very fluid also. So what we are talking about right now, this might change if we have this conversation after 5 years. So Asim, what would you like to add to this discussion at this point of time?
So I think I echo some of the stuff that my friends have said. I mean, it's also an ongoing thing, and I mean, it's also, I think the ebb and flow is also, it's not just simply an ebb and flow, like the change is slow and fast, but sometimes, I mean, there is also like sometimes you regress also. So I mean, I didn't grow up as being a very masculine male person, but now that I'm thinking about when I should expect to be, more resolved, I should be able to resolve more of my, self understanding of my gender roles. I can see that. So I have a boy and a girl, are twins. They're 10. And I have felt, and this is, I mean, I am speaking from the very depth of my heart, which I have not really articulated for myself also. Like when my son does not listen to something, I'm not as angry on him in comparison to my daughter. If my daughter says something, I mean, if she disagrees with me, I sometimes have this like 1 millimeter of extra anger. And I think that is probably because, I mean, in my mind, I still have some unresolved, sort of notions of, what a boy and a girl are supposed to, behave in a way. But returning to my IFM days, I think, I mean, I also want to. So I use this example to sort of, also emphasize that the progress or change is not probably linear for everyone. It goes back and forth, and there is a dialectic, and then you step back, step forward, step back, step forward. So one. But if I go back to like IFM, I think one of the things that I really distinctly remember is like two people. One was Manisha Chadha, our senior, and one Matri Charlu, who is unfortunately not with us anymore in our batch. I think both of them sort of like really, for me, I mean, they like really represented like people, women especially, who had asserted their space in a way that really changed my understanding of both masculinity and femininity. That there are no, these alternative ways in which you can be, and so both of them were like really assertive, and they were like really, in a way, I would also say, I mean, I saw them threatening my understanding of what men and women should be and how they should behave. And I have already said that I did not come in with a lot of like very I don't want to use the term toxic, but a very hyper valued masculinity. But even then, they seemed like extraordinary. They seemed like extra assertive. But over 2 years of seeing them, I mean, 1 year with Manisha, but 2 years of Charlu, I think that really, really pushed my understanding of both masculinity and femininity in ways that was like truly, truly radical. So I would give credit to both of them. I'll stop.
Thank you. So yeah, I mean, so Maitri was definitely, even for, I don't think only for men, but I think she was a role model for women as well. And the way, I think what you said about asserting her space, so doing it, and I think a lot of it was like looking at from women's perspective, it was also like to some of us, it might have appeared manly as well, because that is how you see men asserting their spaces. But definitely, I think that was a learning as well. So going to Rahul.
Yeah. Uh, so for me, I think if I see the change, I think the change has been twofold. So as I said that growing up to my school age, I was pretty oblivious to the idea of masculinity or the uh, gender discrimination. So I did not see it, or probably I did not take notice of it. So I never kind of thought about it. So coming to IFM, I think So the twofold change is that one was the realization of the gender bias. So first time when you are an institute like IIFM, where it has a social development kind of orientation, you talk about these topics, you discuss with friends. So for the first time, you are realizing that social context and the shallowness of my idea that it was the men who were by it, the society was biased against men just because women are not getting punished at my school. So from that level of concept to first getting the realization of the gravity of gender bias that exists in our society. So that was, I think, the first change. And then I think over the years, as I have evolved and thought more about this subject, and as I see around the society that we live in, I have also realized the hollowness and the fakeness of this whole concept of masculinity, because I don't think there is anything called masculinity. Masculinity is just the role that is expected of you by the societal norms. So what is masculinity? As we are all talking, Asim said, you are supposed to be more macho. You are supposed to be impressing girls. You are like strong, athletic, or protecting women. So all these are like roles that have been thrust on men because of the social construct, and probably because it has evolved right from the biologic. It has probably a biological origin that men were stronger, so they used to hunt and gather, so that made them economically more powerful. And as you are economically the breadwinner, you have more say in society, you have more representation politically, economically, in every sphere, and hence you have a overall gender biased society. So then there are certain roles expected out of men, and that is what I think probably what we are calling masculinity. So in I think from the sensitization towards the concept of masculinity to the hollowness of that whole concept of masculinity has been the biggest change. So now I know that if somebody is just uh, trying to say shout at a woman, how hollow that is, or if you are trying to be strong or trying to shout down a woman, or probably just because you're biologically stronger, you are hitting someone. So that is all very shallow and superficial, this thing. So to and I get very frustrated even at the overall biasness, not just in against women, but also the way we are trying to deal with it. So that frustration, say for example, if the women are being given free seats in buses or other sorts of privileges, which may not be uh, the right way of dealing with it, or the whole concept that if there are queues, that this is a men's queue or a women's queue, or trying to reserve seats for women, I think to some extent it may be good, but the whole concept of protecting women itself is again actually a gender bias thing. So we just need to be uh, treating them treat have a society, or at least aiming for a society where gender is not the criteria for anything. But I know that we are still not there, and hence uh, the society needs to give favor to women at this stage. But probably the ultimate objective should be where actually there is a we have a society where the things are not decided on gender, or there are no privileges given based on gender, but we're a long way from there. So I think this has been the change for me, that from being first of all getting sensitized to the whole concept of gender and masculinity, and to understanding the hollowness of that whole concept. So this is what I think has been the change for me.
Thank you, Rahul. And thank you for like summing up. I think you summed it up very nicely. So I think the whole onus on men, which has been thrust upon them to be the provider, to be the protector, and kind of like making them feel, and in the whole patriarchy as seen as benevolence, that you're giving some seats to women, some quotas to women, whereas we are not able to kind of like tackle the root cause of inequality. And so, just to add, like, when I was growing up, my grandfather used to, so he used to do like, वो कपड़े सुखाने जाते थे छत पे. So he would, because my grandmother would wash them and he would go. And for me, it was very normal. And I would hear a lot of people talking about ki this is a very woman-headed household, which I never thought it was a woman-headed, because like my grandfather had probably he had a more say, but that's what appeared to people. And while like, my husband, when my son was younger, so he was the one who stayed at home because I was traveling a lot. तो वो काफी घर से काम करता था. But if somebody had to come and meet him, he would say कि मैं अच्छा ऑफिस से अभी आऊंगा, because also to kind of like perform that role that when he was outside and he has to come back. And he was very happy during COVID, and he said कि अब तो सब लोग घर से काम कर रहे हैं, so now I can happily say without being judged. So these are the kind of, and it is kind of like what some of you have been saying, it's harmful for everybody. It isn't really like as harmless as it appears to be. It does give entitlements, but it doesn't really, it's not like as benevolent to men as it appears to be as well. Okay, so I think I would really love to continue this, but looking at the time, we have a few questions here. And Shikha, uh, can you just come over, and then
Sure,
and
sure.
any one of you can answer it, and if more 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 than one person wants to answer it, I'll be very happy to take it.
Sure. Nimisha, there were a couple of questions. I think the two from Varsha and Ravi first, and I would combine them. Varsha says, do you feel the change has come with a sense of loss of power for you, or any other loss that you feel? And Ravi is asking if that change is good. So, anyone who'd like to take this up?
I can share very briefly and will shut up for others. So I was thinking about Varsha ma'am's question, and I can relate like one very small, micro, but very real experience. I mean, 10 years ago, until maybe 10, 15 years ago, I mean, if I had to cry, my whole jaw and my face and my head would like jam and feel jammed. And I think, I mean, over the last 10, 15 years, it's become very easy to cry. It's not such a traumatic experience. And I think there is something that has changed in me, and I feel very relaxed. I think for me, this personal change in my notion of masculinity is actually very relaxing. Not sure if it is more power or less power, but definitely very, very relaxing.
I'll just add to, so for me personally, I think it has been a positive change because I was not aware of the gender and masculinity thing, never thought about it, to first of realizing, and then, as I said, realizing the hollowness of it. So I actually, because of that past where I was oblivious, I don't have that baggage of that gender roles. So I do everything at my home, from sweeping the floor to washing dishes to everything, and I don't mind if there are guests or my in-laws or whoever is there. So because I never thought that it was something to be done only by women, although I saw probably around me most of the times it's women doing it. One thing that my own in-laws would not like, if I go to my in-laws and start washing dishes at my in-laws place, they don't like it, although I do it there also. So I have this habit that whenever I eat, I just generally don't like dirty sinks, and also I do my dishes. So if I do it, they don't like it. But I think for me, it's not kind of liberating because I never had that baggage. But yes, I like the change that I became sensitive to it. That this actually is an issue in the first place, and a very hollow one. So these are like very fake indicators of our superiority, that you can't sweep the floor or you can't dry clothes on the terrace. So this is what I was talking about, the hollowness of our gender roles.
I think Shikha might have a lot of stuff to say on this, but I think the issue with cleanliness, and I think we've come to a delicate balance in the house, is जिसको problem है वो साफ करे. So I would call it less of masculinity and more of basically OCD, which I also suffer from, about having a clean sort of space, and it then falls sometimes onto me. to basically solve that problem for myself. In regards to the change itself, I've enjoyed, sort of the journey of life. I don't regret any of it. I wish I had more experiences, more diverse experiences, but yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed all of it so far.
Okay. And unless anyone else wants to take it, there is another very good question here from Manmeet, which says, "How do you answer your kids' questions on and if and when and why are boys and girls treated differently, and not necessarily in
Your
your house?"
voice is breaking, Shikha.
I was just saying, Manmeet's question here: How do you answer your kids' questions on, when and why boys and girls are treated differently?
So I think for me, the journey has been, as I said, that when I was growing up, I had all men in the house except my mother. And now the tables have turned, and now it's all women in my house and I'm the only man in the house. So I have a daughter who asks, but I think there's a lot of role of my wife there. She's been, she's very open. She never let that taboo come. So she's very open with our daughter. Probably I would have hesitated to discuss many things with her, but because of her, because she's made her in a way that she answers everything very openly, discusses very openly, uh, all sorts of topic with her. So I think our daughter now is very comfortable talking to us, and she's very comfortable talking uh, to me, to ask questions to me, which which has given me actually the confidence to respond. Otherwise, if she was not that open to ask the questions, I would probably not initiate it from my side or hesitate. So there, I think my wife and my daughter being has taken the initiative, which has given me the confidence to probably now discuss things more openly with them about any subject. So I think the family, if you have some shortcoming, I think the family gives you that balance, and I think that is a blessing if that balance comes from the family. So you may not have all the answers, but if you have a partner who can support you in those ways, so that has been a good balance in my family at least.
Alok, you're on mute.
So I would just like to add a point here. See, I also came from a family where we were just two brothers. This is a very emancipated group. So I'll just discuss this threadbare. So, for example, I didn't know about periods and napkins for a very, very long time before I came to IFM and stuff like that. But I guess today my wife has been very, you can say, level-headed to make my son understand that there is something like this when you talk about girls, also because of the social media and news, and there's so much of onslaught of so many things that I think today when you talk about good parvarish, you should also be able to preempt the kind of questions that kids ask today despite their age. So today, if my son is 11, probably when I was 11, I did not have those questions for my parents, but he definitely has. And I cannot kind of go back in time and say, ki, bhai, you cannot ask these questions to me because you're 11 years old or 10 years old or something like that. So that's a very big difference from what our childhood was and what our children's childhood are today at this point in time. So I think that's a very big change in even in terms of masculinity as to what you're trying to project for them as good upbringing or masculinity or whatever. Yeah.
Anyone else? And I see another question. Ravi is very
So,
laconic in his
But
question.
so
Sorry, I would
I
like
have,
to say something.
I have
Asim has the hand raised.
have a quick hand. I mean, just two quick things. So, latching on to Alok's point about preempting questions. So this year we have been thinking about, how to talk to our kids who are 10, a boy and a girl, twins, about, stuff related to sex education. And we have just been, talking and thinking about it. But last week, my kids came to us and asked us, did you guys also do that thing that you do under the sheets? And I asked what, and he said that what you do to make babies. And so, you can't really, preempt questions now anymore. You really have to be like really, really proactive about, when to deal with things. But I think Manmeet's question, one of the things, and I agree completely with Rahul and Alok in what they brought in. I think one thing that I have learned in the last, and me and my spouse have learned, is to always debrief children on what they learn, because I mean they will eventually actually learn thrice or four times more from sources other than you would ever imagine. I mean, they'll learn from TV, they'll learn from their peers, and sometimes their peers have older siblings, so they will introduce them to a lot of things that you are not ready to introduce them to. So I think what we have learned in our life, I mean, from our experience, is to always debrief. And earlier we thought, I mean, we should protect our children from very, blatant representations of patriarchy or this and that and violence. But we have, or I mean, the F word and, language and everything. But I think what we have sort of, now come to understand is that it is more important to actually debrief rather than protect and prevent. So debriefing, I think, is something that we should probably, I mean, we inculcate in our family as like a nightly routine. We talk about the day and we talk about, things that happened and debrief some of them. And sometimes we are not able to, but we will, I mean, maybe in the coming week or so. So I think I'll stop there. But I think Manmeet's question is also very, very important, because it is in the everyday and small things that all of these things build up and become. Like, does a man mean? What does a woman mean? So we have to treat them in the everyday too.
Thank you, Asim. I see another question from Ravi, and given how laconic the question is, I'm going to interpret it. Ravi is saying baggage. Is there a baggage of masculinity that you deal with, in your day to day, and how you've grown up and coming out from IFM and 24 years on?
Well, I'm sorry I'm being such a jerk right now, jumping on every question, but I think I like completely disagree with
You've always been, my dear. Yeah. Go on.
I like completely would like to disagree with Rahul on his repeated emphasis on not being, aware or not having baggage. And we can have this, we'll wrestle it out outside of this room some other day. But I think it's very hard to not have baggage, and all of us have a baggage. And sometimes, not knowing something doesn't mean that you are not participating in it. So I think all of us have a baggage. I mean, at least I have a baggage, and I think sometimes we don't see something because that is the default, and the default is invisible. So I think in that sense, we have baggage. And Ravi sir is a notorious free speech champion, so I can imagine the nature of his question, but I think there is baggage.
Yeah. So I think you're right. Uh, Probably, as I said, I was very oblivious to that concept. So I never, I never had thought that I was, uh, that gender thing was never, I was not sensitized to that. So probably I did have baggage, because you cannot avoid that growing in a society where you have such distinct gender roles around you. Say, for example, my mother was a housewife and my father was going to office. So that definitely would be there on my psyche, that it's mostly men who go there. But what I meant was that I did not have to see a blatant or very rude forms of gender biases in my family, where there is a straightaway gender bias between boys and girls. But then, so that is what I meant. Or I did not, I was not saddled with the fact that you can't do this, because, as I said, we were all men family. So if my mother says, okay, यहाँ पे पोछा लगा दो, तो हम लोग वो भी लगाते थे, क्योंकि otherwise we were the children there, my brother and me, and both were males. So that was the thing that I meant. But definitely you're right. You cannot avoid a baggage in a society full of gender biases.
Okay, so can I just add something here, like though it has nothing to do with like me, but one thing I've insisted with my son is that whatever work happens at home, वो काम है घर का, so somebody has to do it. It is nothing that he's helping me out. So often a lot of men, like when they do work at home, they do it believing that they're helping their partner finish that chore. So for my son, I've been very very particular that ये काम है, खाना खाना है तो बनाना पड़ेगा. So it is not like you're helping me out. कपड़े सुखाने हैं तो तुम्हारे भी कपड़े हैं. So that is something which is because I mean as a parent which I have tried to do, and it's not easy because they learn like the worst from their peer a lot of times. So he once told me that and making him unfit for the society in which he's living in. So this is also something, Asim, your children are still like younger, they're not teenagers yet. But yeah, okay. So, Shikha, anything else, or do we go for a wrap up?
I think one last question from my side, just listening to this discussion, and I've been quasi 2001, having been a partner of this batch. I What is one thing, and this is a question to all of you who may be willing to answer. What are one or two things that you understood as masculinity and today it's different, or something that you do now that you wouldn't have thought you would be doing 24 years later, which in the definition of masculinity has changed for you? Any examples, anything that you think you can mention here?
I have probably, if I'm audible clearly now. Am I just, somebody can confirm? Shika, am I audible clearly?
Yes.
Yes. And I will share a very personal experience in terms of what really has changed. So my father passed away last October. And being the eldest in my generation, the whole burden of decision making, uh, I mean, the expectation of making decision of how my mother should transact in her life now has suddenly, and that part of that includes also my mother, uh, seems to have fallen on my head. And that's a struggle which, I mean, there is a very deep consciousness and realization that that's something which I am not going to do. If I look back 25 years or 24 years, was that the scene? Probably not, because I was kind of being prepped up or prepared for taking such decisions in life. And that's something of a realization when this has happened in the past 6 months, that her travels, and she has been going around meeting her extended family now in the past 2, 3 months. Her travels, when and where, these small things is something which consciously, I mean, pushing it back, that no, you have to decide, and there's something which you tell me the date, I'll get the tickets done. I mean, small things like this is something which otherwise came very naturally in terms of taking the decision. And these are some probably some of the more nuanced one, but uh, I have in both my professional and personal life, uh, I find redundancy very, very liberating in terms of the ability not to take decisions, or the whole onus of not making decisions, whether it at home, uh, decisions alone, or at the in the professional space. And that's something which I'm thoroughly enjoying. And looking back, probably I was trained to take all the decisions. That's something which I would carry.
Okay, so one quick point from my side, which I could not have imagined doing, say 20 years ago, is the kind of conversations I have with my daughter. I mean, first of all, a 16-year-old. When I look back, when I was a 16-year-old, I was pretty dumb to that extent that I was not aware about anything. As I said, to the extent that I was, as I've been saying, that to as pertinent issue as gender bias, I could not fathom. Forget about many other things. But my daughter has far more evolved ideas about everything in this world, be it LGBTQ to various other topics, and the kind of mature discussions she does, and open discussions which we would probably not even think about asking or talking to our parents. So on those subjects with such maturity, I could not have ever imagined that I would be having this kind of conversation with my daughter at such a young age. So that, I think, is a great thing to see, uh, and also how open they are about these topics, and particularly with the maturity that is there.
Anyone else?
I can
Uh,
go. We can take this offline, Shika, or I can go. I think, as I said earlier, parenting has really sort of changed me. I mean, being a parent has changed me. I never thought I would have any time for children 11 years back. And that all changed in 2014 in the stroke of a second, basically, when I saw my daughter. I think that's the biggest change that I've had. I never thought I would be geared to be a good parent or a parent, even.
I will add to that. Our children think Pranav is a primary cook because he does more cooking. In our household, the Karva Chauth Vrat is kept by Pranav. So there are a lot of things that probably you wouldn't think years ago, but they do happen now. So our parents did not see that. Okay, Nimish, I think we have covered the questions. If you want to close off, and
Yeah.
we can. We've
So
also
can I?
run way over time.
So thank you so much. I think it was like I really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you all for agreeing. It was the willingness of all these people to come out here and bear it all, basically, which made this discussion happen. Can I invite Amit to just do a quick wrap up before we close this session?
Yeah, sure. And before I'm sure Avinav is anticipating what I'm going to say next. Avinav, I'm not going to say it depends. As someone who has struggled with the idea of masculinity, pretty much across my life, and continues to do so. I think this conversation was really amazing. I mean, so many things really echoed with I think my own thought process, and I think the core points, if I look across all of my friends, from all these many years, I think the idea of recognizing that there are these stereotypes which are thrust upon men. मर्द को दर्द नहीं होता, the concept of protection, the concept of you got to do this, be the man. Uh, and from that point of view to reach a space where you are recognizing it and then acting on it. The second part, I think, which Proud touched upon it, was that looking at the other gender from afar and kind of making a particular point of view about them, and how that changed as they traverse the journey to having batchmates, partners, children, from other gender, and how that has changed them in terms of their perception of masculinity. I think these are very, very powerful messages. Avinav spoke about change, and I think his very personal story of how he viewed masculinity from the point of view of what happened when after his father passed away. I think if I have to look at this common strand across the idea of masculinity is to recognize it, to act on it, and also recognize that there is at no point in time we are bereft of conditioning. There will be, change is the only constant. And I think the only way to navigate this is through that self awareness, through that recognition, and, to respond to the idea of justice and fairness. So that is what really, echoed with me. With that, Namisha, back to you.
Thank you. So I had asked Amit that, if he can comment of if there were any surprises. But he being he hasn't really he's been as diplomatic as ever, though he has refrained from saying it depends. But I think, really speaking, it was kind of like some of you I have been more witness to your journeys, but some of you have been a totally a revelation to me as well, and I'm sure it was quite interesting. So the whole idea is also to have more and more of these kind of self-reflections where we talk about issues which we never thought. I mean, I never thought I would be having this kind of conversation. I remember in IFM, once I was having very bad menstrual cramps, and Asim kept on asking me कि क्या हो गया है तुम्हें? And I was not very okay with telling him that what's wrong with me. So yeah, so I think we've come a long journey where we can talk about things which were supposed to be taboo, moved on, and responding. So, Vatsan, you have a hand up. Go ahead.
I was just saying, Nusha, there were so many surprises. Cannot start off with that. The big one was Asim's mustache.
Yeah,
So,
where did it go?
sorry.
Where did it go? Has he photoshopped it out?
No, no.
Well, I think, yep, Asim.
I can share something which is not just literal but also metaphoric. So when I eventually shaved off my mustache, the feeling of cool breeze on the upper lip was so liberating. And believe me, I mean, leaving this behind is liberating.
So this
Packed
whole,
it,
I
packed it.
think it. So I
Rahul may
think.
have a different opinion. Rahul may have a different opinion.
Yeah.
This is
So I
my
think.
sign of masculinity. I added a sign of masculinity.
No, he put a picture which was like so super cool actually. So the one which he shared for the panel, and we were all joking, saying that, so uber masculine. So thank you all. I really don't want to go, but thank you all for like taking out time on a Sunday. Like I had to really beg Vatsyayan to say that you have to take out time, but he kindly like agreed. And Avinav also thanks a lot. He had changed his train on the 9th but we changed the program from then to now. And let's go with the liberation, and let's close this session now. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Awesome.
everyone.
Good fun. Good fun. Thank you.
Thank you.